This is our Executive Learning Council who will be making the decision on on almost everything that we do with regards to learning. And the first decision is our management training. So, Belinda, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, George. Hi, everybody. So George, I'm the HR director here at Best Buddies. I oversee the employee life cycle here. So everything from job descriptions, job postings, managing new hires here, assisting with like staff relations through separations here in the organization. So that's my responsibility here. I did conduct 2 trainings here, so like the new hire orientation, as well as our manager like operations type training on some of their HR responsibilities here. So I'm responsible for 2 trainings in the organization as well.
Great, May.
Hi, George. Hi, everyone. I'm May Masterio. I am the Director of State Operations. So what I and our team does is we work with field staff on various things, but as it relates to you, helping with onboarding, helping with training. So if they do elevate to a different position, it's getting assimilated to those roles and responsibilities. And one of the things that we've seen just in the field is the need for something like this, for a new manager kind of training to really understand like the soft skills of what it is to be a new manager. So I'm excited to hear from you today.
Great.
You just reminded me when you said that one of the long-standing clients of mine has been using this program was Federal Express.
Yeah.
And the chairman of Federal Express, the founder, Fred Smith, I've written 4 books. He's in all 4 of them. He's one of my heroes. But his favorite expression, when he talks about leadership, he said, the hard stuff is easy. The soft stuff is hard. So you hit a button when you said that. I thought Fred Smith said the same thing. So
Awesome.
Great. Sophie, I know you're not on camera, but you are audio, I hope.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. And also, yeah, I can go on camera.
You don't have to. I mean, if you want, great.
My best, but hello. I was just finishing something up when I first joined, but I'm happy to be on camera. Hi, I'm Sophie Duperson. I am the state director for Best Buddies in New York. So I oversee our statewide programs, fundraising, and just overarching strategy.
Okay.
Great. Julie? Okay, well, Julie, you've met. Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm here. I thought I had done my speaking part, and I just took a bite of something, but
I'm sorry.
So George, I'm Julie. I am the VP of HR and Operations at Best Buddies, and I oversee the HR strategy and some operations, and actually quite a bit under the umbrella of things I have to do. But and I've been with Best Buddies for almost 20 years, so I like to share that. Thank you, Corey.
Sorry, Julie.
No.
And Thomas is not feeling well, so he will not be joining us, but we're recording, as will the other people will also watch him play back. So for those who are just meeting George for the first time, he's the founder of Organization Dynamic Institute. I hope I got that right. He's a professor emeritus at Boston University. And he's published foundational works on performance management, quality assurance, and alignment. So if you Google him, you'll see a lot of books. He has his MBA from Boston College and his PhD from Ohio State. One of his main clients that I was always really impressed with was the U.S. Navy, because I feel like if he can get the Navy aligned, maybe he can help get Best Buddies aligned. We're no easy customer. And also he currently holds the rank of captain in the Air Force. So those are just some of the little pieces of where he comes from and what he does without getting too into it. I invited him here so he can introduce us to, well, specifically the program that we were looking at, which is Managing for Productivity, if that's in fact the right one for us to do. It was recommended by our consultant, Jack Landers, who has a lot of experience with George and has, if I'm not mistaken, worked in this program. And after spending a lot of time with us, Jack felt that this was best aligned for what we need and what might work here at Best Buddies. So Jack, I'm going to invite you to explain your work, Management for Productivity, a little, and then I'm sure we have a lot of questions.
Okay. As you just heard, I'm a professor of management at Boston University, professor emeritus. Now, that means emeritus is Latin, it means old. Probably 30 years ago, by accident, I became an accidental entrepreneur. And what happened was, as you just heard, I have a military background, but then got out of the Air Force and went back to graduate school. But the lessons learned during those 5 years I spent flying airplanes have stayed with me for the rest of my life. And among those lessons is an appreciation of the impact of leadership and effective management. That your comment about the Navy has struck a nerve with me, because when I was in the Air Force, we used to say the Navy was 200 years of tradition unhampered by progress. Having worked, what you were referring to, Corey, was 5 years that I spent as a consultant to the Chief of Naval Operations, who made one of my books called The Power of Alignment, required reading for all the admirals in the Navy. And every wisecrack that I made about the Navy when I was in the Air Force, I retract. Because the Chief of Naval Operations and the admirals that I worked with for 5 years are among the sharpest, brightest, most patriotic people that I've ever met. It was a wonderful experience. And it reinforces my ideas about leadership and management. When I said accidentally, I stumbled into becoming an entrepreneur. I'm a professor, and I planned to be an academic. And I discovered, again by accident, there are only two things I've ever been good at. And one of them I discovered when I got to Boston University was, one of them was teaching. The other was flying airplanes, by the way. And I got a call when I was assistant professor. I think back in the 70s, I think I was making $14,000 a year. I think that was the going rate. And the dean called and said, there's a huge healthcare conference going on in Boston called the New England Hospital Assembly, where people from all over New England come together. 4,000 people came together to talk about, management and leadership and healthcare issues. And there's the usual seminars and breakout sessions. And he said somebody was going to run a session on the effective management of people, but they got sick. They're looking for a replacement. Would you be interested? And then he added, parenthetically, and they're going to pay $100. And I said, who do I have to kill to do this? So I went down and I essentially, in 3 hours, did what included the topics of the course that I've been teaching at Boston University. The effective management of people. It was a natural for me. I went down there, it was a great success. They asked me to repeat it that same week. And then eventually they asked me to, would I be interested in videotaping it in subsequent years? We cut a deal with Controlled Data, who wanted to get into individualized learning. Remember, this is video-based learning back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. That was high-tech stuff then. Videotapes. So we cut the deal. They flew me out to Minneapolis. I think I put up $3,000. New England Hospital Assembly put up $8,000 for market research. Control Data put up $160,000, which was the right ratio of, you know, size to money to who could contribute. So I put together a program called Motivational Dynamics, and it's essentially the course that I teach at Boston University. You've got an outline of QMS that we're going to show, Corey.
Yes.
That content, you're going to see in a minute, that's in the course. Well, it was in that early course that the first program is called Motivational Dynamics. And it's me on video and a workbook going through the subject matter, the content of the subject matter you're about to see. Motivation, managing groups, setting objectives, and all that good and timeless stuff. Well,
why don't I pull up, I don't want to do it as a full screen, but I'm going to pull up as a small screen, George, just so that, you know, we can, there we go, reference anything that you need.
Oh, good. Okay. Can you go to the next slide that has the
Yes,
content?
sir. Mm-hmm. Here we go.
I want to go back to this slide. That's that's the most important slide, the first one.
This one?
Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute. I just want
Okay. Yes, sir.
to see the content. That content was essentially in that first course. Motivational Dynamics was a healthcare course with vignettes with nurses and doctors and me talking about these concepts. It turned out to be a smashing success. 1,200 hospitals started eventually using that program with this kind of content. Surprising everybody, including me. But it was a wonderful experience. And suddenly I became an authority on healthcare management. And there isn't, over the years, based on the success of that program, there isn't a healthcare organization in America of any size or scope that I haven't spoken to or at during that time. Well, at the end of a couple of years, Control Data had an option of converting that healthcare program into a generic management training program without nurses, now, you know, supervisors and actors dressed in civilian clothes instead of medical garb. They chose not to do it. They were in the midst of a major reorganization. So the next day, exercised my option and to say to Control Data, I'm taking the program back. It was a sabbatical year for me. I took all the money that I'd earned in royalties for the healthcare program, minus one Mercedes. That was my moon rock, that I was going to get something out of it. I took the rest of the money and invested it into, if you know Boston at all, WGBH, public television station, hired a director, wrote another workbook called Managing for Productivity, essentially the same content. Hired the guy from Control Data, and we launched Managing for Productivity. This is now back in the 80s. Again, smashing success. But to show you how primitive it was, the first sale we made, this guy that I hired, who became a senior vice president of my company, went down for the first pitch to Atlanta, Georgia, at a show, a human resources show, showed the video, showed the workbook, and made the first sale. He called, he was really excited. First sale, we did it. The only problem was it was to the Corps of Engineers, Army. They wanted the program in 16mm film. It cost $5,000 to convert video programs into 16mm film. So it was a Pyrrhic victory, but it was launched the program. Managing for Productivity and that content that you're seeing on the screen, because essentially it's not been changed. For all these years, including 5 years ago, I stopped teaching my graduate class. It's now just before the pandemic, so it's 4 years ago. Same content. It's timeless content. Managing for Productivity at one time was the most widely used management training program in the world. It's in 17 languages. This core basic content just resonated with all kinds of environments, government, certainly industry. The quality management skills title is the most recent version of that program. And we put the quality management skills because in the 90s and in the year 2000, we're still talking 15, 20 years ago. Quality was sweeping across the United States as a concept. So we wanted to hook onto that wave, and we developed other programs related to quality and quality improvement. But in terms of basic management skills, this still is foundational. It all depends on what you want to do with people who gain an understanding of these skills. Corey, can we go back to the first slide?
Of course.
Over.
This slide?
Yeah. Because I think one of the things you as the evaluation team need to consider is what do you want to accomplish with implementing those concepts around best buddies. The pedagogy, which I think has made these programs so successful, isn't just the content. It's good stuff, but I think it's also the pedagogy. It's the way the program is deployed. We think you'd be well served if you double dipped. I'm a great believer in double dipping. One, conveying content that's very sound and solid, backed up by a lot of good research to individual people, individual managers. But I think the real value is when you bring the managers together to apply these concepts organizationally across the board, to build management teams or reinforce the teams you already have as they go through the training. For those of you who are involved in the training business, you know you have a lot of options. You can do sheep dip people for hours at a time and hope something sticks, or you can do it longitudinally over time, which we would recommend. We bring people together, usually maybe once a week, go through one of the units, whatever the topic is, give them a chance to digest and practice week to week, to come back together and say, I tried what he said, it didn't work at all. Or, boy, did I have a great success when I tried X. Something that they picked up in the course. And then and then apply current issues facing the organization using the skills that they're learning as they go through. It could be a 10-week experience if you do it once a week, for an hour or two per week. The content pedagogically is they do some pre-reading in the workbook. They watch a short video, probably 8 to 10 minute video, mostly of me just talking at them with some vignettes and actors, whatever the topic of the day is. And then there are exercises, in-class exercises, usually a mini case. How would you handle this situation of motivation or conflict or objective setting and so on? And often, in most of the units, some kind of exercise beyond a case. So what we're trying to do is mix up the pedagogy so they can see stuff, they can do stuff, they can read stuff, they can talk to each other. All different ways that people learn and acquire skills and knowledge. So what the team have to decide, the committee has to decide, is if this is of value and interest to you, that how we're going to use this stuff to really benefit the whole organization, not just individuals acquiring a new set of skills or language, but rather how's the organization going to respond and be better for it. By the way, I thought of you guys and I saw something on the internet about the Best Buddies trip that was canceled.
The Paris trip.
Paris trip. I felt just awful for
I saw that
Before you
too.
guys. The organization told me to read that. But that would be a current, if you had a team going through this course, that would be a subject you'd be dealing with, you know, directly as a team, as these things come up, because you've already begun a process, a foundational process of bringing people together to learn a set of skills, deal with current issues and problems, and best ways to resolve those using the content of the course. So, what else can I tell you? What else would you like to know?
I want to see, I have some questions, but I want to make sure that everyone else gets an opportunity to ask questions. I can also do this very briefly because I know we're not going to necessarily drill down to it, but this is briefly Unit 1. This is briefly Unit 2.
By the way,
Oh,
Cory,
I'm on 3. Sorry. Yes.
I'm assuming you feel free to distribute these PowerPoints so that everybody has this at their convenience to walk through it.
This is also attached to the invite, not this slideshow, but a general overview 3. I just want to go through it mostly for the video also. 4. 5. Sorry to be so slow, everyone, but those in retrospect can pause this. 7. And I'm going to include this in our folder. Managing results and integration. Okay, so now anyone who's here meeting George for the first time, May, Sophie, Belinda, do you guys have any questions off the top of your head?
Hi, it's May. I guess my question, there's a lot of really great content in here, but what is like the medium of the content that's delivered? Is it like live? Is it recorded? Like, how is this program, I guess, delivered?
Ideally, what I'd recommend to you is it's facilitator based.
Okay.
That we would recommend that we bring someone down. You identify people in your organization that can become facilitators of this program, in-house facilitators. Not, we've had clients that wanted my people to come down and teach the course. We don't recommend that. We think you should acquire the capability of doing that through facilitator training. So you have in-house people who can now stand in front of the group and move people through the course. And every unit starts with a discussion questions, a video, a reading, and then a video of the content of the day, whichever the unit is. And then, as I said before, the facilitator now works through case discussion, exercises relative to the topic of the day. So again, mix of pedagogies, people, you know, facilitating, video, readings, talking. It's all part of the dynamic of taking the program, going through the program.
I have a question just for clarification, George. This is Julie. This would be a train the trainer format, correct? We would train some individuals who then would train, and May and Sophie, and Belinda, this would be a great opportunity for us to bring individuals up within the organization, right? So, you know, obviously we'd have to discuss it a little bit more, but this may be a great opportunity for like our senior regional directors and their directors, you know, something like that. Or we, you know, because there's some discussion that we need to have with core, because it could be a situation where, you know, we bring new people in, right? So these are some of the details that we'll discuss. But thank you, George.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because you want kind of residual residential capability within the organization, because you are constantly moving people in and out and promoting them and so on. So it's good to have that internal capacity that's under your control.
Right.
The other thing I should mention too, because I'll get even with Jack about this, but as I told Corey, I'm not planning to make any money on this deal. I'm at the age and stage where I'm in a give back mode. And so I mentioned to Corey that if you want to move ahead with this, I'll do it at cost.
Well, Will, there's a lot to talk about, George, you know, in terms of how we roll it out. So, but let me get to Belinda's, because this isn't actually the time for money conversation, because I don't want to, you know, I want apples to apples first. Belinda, what were you going to ask?
So George, we're looking into like some of the skills and some of the areas we definitely want to drill down on what we want to go over with our managers. And you know, we're thinking of a lot of our newer managers, like people that have never managed before, they're out of college, and they really do need some of like that basic operational piece. So, you know, we're thinking of like, you know, recruitment and onboarding some of those basic skills. Is this course kind of flexible where that's something we could add in? I'm not really even sure of the question, but like those are some areas to some basic type skills that we also want some of our managers to develop. And I'm just curious, is that something we can intertwine into this course?
Above and beyond the content? You mean some additional content? Was that the question? I'm sorry. But...
I guess, again, there's the two areas that I'm thinking of.
Can I help?
Sure.
Because I think what Belinda, hi George, it's Julie again. I think I understand, Belinda, what you're saying is this, George, we have managers that are, you know, more senior in terms of leadership, who have, you know, who manage a bigger teams, have managed longer. And then we also have a lot of managers who may be first time managing people. And I think what Belinda's asking is, are we able to scale in terms of like, you know, because you're not going to teach, you know, the same skills, you know, at least not at the same level to someone who's just first coming into, you know, becoming a manager, and someone who's been managing for 20 years, right? Am I right, Belinda?
Well, I think I think this, when I see this whole complete course, I think it's great for the manager in any sort of manager in any phase. Mm-hmm. But I guess like my question is when we look into some of the best practices that some of our managers need, just initial basic skills that they need. I would like to see something like kind of like attractment and recruitment and onboarding to be a part of that. And I was just curious if that's something that is somehow intertwined into the training. Because you did mention that there are parts where there is like, we're talking, we're reading. I'm just curious if some of those operational pieces are part of the conversation as well when we go through the training.
I don't think it's too much of a concern differentiating between people who have 20 years of experience in management and somebody who had 20 minutes of experience. The content, as I said, is timeless. Mm-hmm. We recommend that for the program, before it's introduced, you have a session with the senior managers of your organization. Let them know what the rest of this organization is going to be experiencing. We've had situations where some of the senior executives have volunteered to become facilitators to get closer to deal with these issues with their own people. So I think we don't need a different course for the senior managers and a different course for the new managers. It's the same content. They may internalize it differently, may utilize it differently, but the content usually is well received at all levels. And by the way, it's geared. If you're into pedagogical stuff, it's geared to the language is geared about the 6th grade. There's nothing highly technical in here.
Thank you, George.
George, I have a question about training groups or divisions or areas. you know, we assumed that we would do well, you and I had talked about your facilitator for some of our senior staff, that it's really our senior VP level of people who we believe need to have an outside trainer. You know, I think internally we have 2 levels of pretty senior management. We have our SVP and VP, and then we have our senior directors. And so I think there's an additional conversation of, you know, if what our senior directors, can they hear this course from internal, can they not? But my real question at the moment is, do you suggest that people learn with their level, so horizontal, or vertical? Because May and Blake, who's not here at the right now, oversee essentially a division, what we call a region of somewhere between 6 and 10 states.
Yep.
And so is that, do you have a best practice, or is that something for the organization to decide? Are we going across or vertically?
I think you obviously can decide to go either way, but I think the recommended thing would be horizontally. If you've got people
Okay.
same rank, same level in the organization, dealing with the same kinds of challenges.
Got it. And then for new people, we don't have a lot of new people. Well, we have new managers. We don't have a lot of new managers at the senior director or VP level. And I assume that new people would come on in a time cohort, not in a area cohort. Okay. Okay.
Any other issues? Any other comments?
I have a question. Yes, I have. So with regards to how we as an organization and how our individuals stay engaged in the work, what is the best practice? Is it, okay, we did our 10-week cohort. Now that cohort stays monthly. Maybe do they meet monthly? Do they meet like how? I'm sure that you don't just do it and leave, like my scuba training. I haven't done that so long, or my skydiving training, which
Why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? And anyway, that's another topic. But I do think, but you hit the nail on the head, Corey. You don't want this to dissolve and disappear. We're trying to build an organizational integration and alignment of these people who, well beyond the court, when the course is well over, can still pick up the phone and say, I got a problem with motivating Charlie Brown. And build that kind of collegial team of managers, not just executive, but people who are managing other people.
I really like that, George. I think it's really important to have that network support.
I do too.
Yeah, I really, really like it.
Now, I wonder also about coaching in the context of this. And I'm sure that some of the organizations that you've worked with do executive coaching or have executive coaches and so on. I don't think that's something that we would ever have the money for, but I would think that maybe there's a way to develop coaching within the context of this. Would you say that's what the facilitators would do, or would you say that that's maybe peer-to-peer, or what do you think?
We work with independent coaches who do this for a living. I never thought of myself as a coach. My focus has always been on improving the dynamics of the organization and effectiveness of the organization, as well as individual people. I think so much depends on the individual facilitator that you choose, whether or not that person has the capability to provide insights and coaching. If you're talking about fairly senior people, I think you really need fairly senior coaches. I wouldn't depend on a newly trained facilitator in this content to give guidance and advice to an individual senior executive.
Mm-hmm. But what about junior? The junior people?
Junior's another story. But, so in that sense, yeah, it goes back to who you choose to be a facilitator. If they bring maturity and a set of, never mind just the set of skills and knowledge of the content, but have the interpersonal skill to be able to guide and direct and brand new managers, that's ideal. But you have to decide who that is.
Mm-hmm. In your experience, and by the way, guys, I have a whole list of questions just to fill the air, but please ask your questions, when you have them. But of course, I came with a list in case anyone else didn't. In your experience for new managers, how does an organization integrate this level of training with on-the-job training? Because one thing that I'm just going to address our new managers, our tenured managers, it is a different story, but we have a lot of on-the-job stuff that they need to learn, and we're trying to be very cautious about slamming them. And so would you say that they would do best doing this first, or would you say, a month or so of on-the-job training, and then this would be great because now they kind of know what they're doing? Or
one of the dynamics that I talk about in the first unit is the natural progression in most organizations where it's between the technical and the managerial skill sets. Most people who are skilled technically are usually rewarded by promotions to management, into a realm where they have often no content, no capability, no history. They're great at accounting, but they're lousy at managing accountants. That when you make that transition of people who are skilled in technical terms into management, that's the ideal for this course. John Cotter, now Professor Emeritus at Harvard, and an old friend, in his writing says that point in time where a technical person is promoted into some kind of management is the most difficult transition in organizational life, because you're leaving one set of skills and exchanging them for really another set of skills. So if on-the-job training involves relatively technical relative to the business you're in, then I'd wait until they demonstrate their capability technically, and then introduce them to this content.
Got it. Okay, that was really helpful. Thanks. How do you know it sticks? How do we know it sticks? What kind of framework do you recommend? Look, for me, if I don't get on the scale every morning, I don't know it sticks, right? I just do not know. And when I stop stepping on the scale every morning is when I'm totally off the plan.
I love it.
I'm not proud, but it's the truth. So how do we know it sticks? What guide can you give us on that?
Gee, it's a tough question, because it sticks if it's constantly reinforced by leadership. If it's not reinforced, like you're stepping off the scale, it will dissipate. So I think you need to engage the senior executives of the organization to become part of this process, to check in as it's going on, and to keep checking after it's all over, and reinforcing some of the content. By the way, but most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, senior executives go through this course. We trained 66,000 people at Procter & Gamble, starting with the president and chairman who went through the course. So I'm sure there are exceptions to this general rule, but most senior executives want to know what you're exposing their workforce to, and when they see the content, this is bread and butter successful executives. As I mentioned earlier, when Fred Smith talked about the soft stuff is hard, he knew exactly what we were talking about. This is the soft stuff that's hard to implement. Any other? What do you got on your list, Corey? What do we, let's
Well, well, I think we're kind of gone through my list, but give me a moment. Someone else can ask a question.
When we talk about, while you're doing that, we're talking about facilitated training. We typically have one of our folks come down, meets with your team, those that you want to have exposed to this stuff and become facilitators. It's a 5-day program. It's 5 days.
Oh, that's excellent timing. I like that time frame.
Well, 5 days is for certification.
Yeah. I have a quick question, or maybe really just a thought about what Corey asked. I think Corey was asking about how do we know it sticks, right? So I'm thinking two things. I'm thinking, do we want to know if it's effective, if the training, if people like it, if it's, people are utilizing these concepts, right? Are we looking to see, is that it, or are you asking, Corey, how do we measure the learning, within, so we're going to teach the managers X, Y, and Z. How can we, is there a way to measure that they are retaining? Or how do we do that?
You just reminded me of something, and I think it was Jack. In my early interaction with Jack Lenders, he was in the restaurant business, as I remember. I'm trying to remember the company.
Yeah, like Taco Bell, or it was like one of those.
That owned a number of restaurants. Darden, or I forget the name of the company.
Olive Garden.
Well, I don't remember.
The Olive Garden.
No, not Olive Garden, but the name of the corporation that owned a bunch of different things. They measured the effectiveness of the program as its impact on turnover. One of the big challenges in the fast food industry is turnover. And as I remember, they tracked the turnover rates of people who had been through the program versus those who had not been through the program. And there was overall, as I remember this, gosh, 25 years ago.
That's interesting.
There was a 10% reduction in turnover compared to the people who had not the program. So one way to measure the effectiveness of the program isn't can they regurgitate and pass a test on the content? It's, are they practicing this stuff, and does it manifest itself in better performance, lower turnover rates, however, whatever the criteria are that you can use for measurement.
Correct. Like, I guess, better managers are better, they hire better people, they onboard their teams better, and all of these, doing this sort of employment cycle, better, then the culture improves, right? So maybe, what we're looking, we can look at measuring, how people feel in terms of culture. We can also, we'll discuss more, but thank you. It was just a couple of thoughts that I had.
Well, it's a good thought, because my brother, for example, I'm working with my brother here in Florida. He has a software company that has just gangbuster diagnostic surveys of employee basis. And if you survey your employees, you have some kind of climate survey or something periodically, you should see, and you can ask the employees directly about the impact of this content on their lives. So if you have a way of doing that already, you could, crank in an extra question or two relative to their managers and the experience that they're experiencing from their managers. Changes in behavior as well.
Yeah, the last survey that we did, one was a culture survey, which is it's 3 years ago, and the latest one was a diversity, equity, and inclusion survey. And we did ask the question about, how do you, feel about working with your manager? And to be honest, those are where the people are most satisfied in those areas, right? I think for us, the primary reason I'm really driving this management training is because, once we have enough employees that we need that. And as it is, an employee's experience really depends on their manager. But the primary driver for us is our managers are really overwhelmed. They have a lot of responsibility, right? So I think also measuring maybe how the managers are feeling after the training could be very helpful for us, right? There's a lot of things we can measure. So
that's an excellent point. Agreed. One of the things that you may want to do that you could steal, I stole it with permission from Federal Express, is the questions they ask their employees about their managers. And it has nothing to do with whether or not they like the manager or don't like the manager. These statements, I can send them to you, Corey.
I'd love him.
Well, yeah.
Thanks.
They're in the books that I've written with their permission. So it's public knowledge.
Excellent.
But it deals with the manager's behavior. My manager does not interfere with my work. My manager does this. My manager tells me, blah, blah, blah. It deals with strictly the behavior that's totally consistent with what's in this course. It's not a coincidence because FedEx and the course are it's all based on solid behavioral content.
excellent. I get it. That makes sense.
So, anything else, guys?
What kind of lead time would you say if we chose to go in this direction, you and your facilitator and company would need? Ish.
Yeah. It's just a question of getting the calendars of people that I would recommend come down and you scheduling when you want to do, pick the team and the day.
Got it.
Give
And
it
the week.
a
A month. Okay. Great. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was getting at. 1 month, 2 months, 4 months.
No,
Okay.
you could do, you can do it quicker. I might be able to track somebody down this afternoon.
Right. Well, and our, the Best Buddies calendar is such that over the years, you learn there's really just essentially 8 weeks to do stuff because, right. So now May and her team and Sophie, they're getting ready for a huge event. They're closing out the school year. They're getting ready for this big event. They have things scheduled in June. Like, it gets a little complicated. Okay. Does wild card questions? Anyone else?
I have no questions. Just thank you, George. It was really great.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Great. Yes, thank you so much, George. This has been fun. I think there's nothing more fun than talking about possibility to me.
Let me get, where are you located? Isn't it Florida?
Miami. Mm-hmm. You're in West Palm, aren't you?
West Palm. We're almost neighbors.
Yeah. Yes,
Happy
we're
to
in.
come down if you like, anytime to talk, perhaps to your senior management about what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think we would very much like that. And especially if you throw in your Navy, and I'm friends with the guy at FedEx stuff, because, I think they'd love it just like I do.
Okay. George, I have to say that my son, I have a 12-year-old, and the first thing I saw when you got on the screen is your airplane pictures right behind you, because he loves airplanes. In fact, we have 2 models, maybe 3 models on, that him and his dad are building. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah, so the love for airplanes, I noticed that. It's really cute.
Well,
but thank you so much.
That's early. Anyway, thank you, guys. Let me know how I can help.
Great. We'll probably circle back in about, I'm going to say 2.5 weeks. I'm going to wait until we meet with the entire team again and see what additional information we want, but just to manage your expectations. Okay. Let me also see if there's anything in the chat that I didn't see. Nope. Okay,
No.
great.
It was just me chatting on the chat. Thank
Great.
you. Bye,
Thank you,
George.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, Smee. Thank you, Sophie. Have a good weekend.
Thank
Thank
you.
guys.
You as
too.
well.
Bye.
Thank you. Hey, Corey.
Let me just stop sharing and let me stop recording. I'm not as